Rose trudged along the dusty shoulder of the lane, her small wagon clattering behind her, broken pipes spilling over its sides. Cars slowed to a crawl, drivers squinting behind speckled windshields, and neighbors raised eyebrows over their fences, lips curling with half-hidden smiles. Some leaned together to whisper, while others didn't bother to hide their laughter. "There goes the junk collector's girl," they'd say, shaking their heads as if certain she'd grow out of it soon enough. In the sharp glare of afternoon, nothing about Rose fit anyone's idea of ambition. She rescued what others tossed, hands as chipped and gritty as the pipe she gathered. The gossip was quick. "What's she planning? A palace of scrap?" But Rose paid it no mind. Her freckles deepened in the summer sun, her eyes fixed on the battered barn ahead. Where the world saw foolishness and waste, Rose walked with purpose, trusting in something she couldn't explain, alone but undeterred in the silent certainty of her own idea. The town clung to the edge of the prairie, flattened under the relentless sun, every house and field marked by seasons of drought and hard-learned patience. Yards once bright with marigolds drooped in tangled patches. Rusty tractors slept at crooked angles where grass had long surrendered. Fences leaned wearily, patched again and again by hands that rarely rested but often came up short. Dust rose in swirls from the gravel roads when pickup trucks passed, carrying familiar faces with eyes as watchful as weathered fence posts. The air tasted of old straw and the memory of rain. Rose's family home stood at the far end of a narrow lane, a peeling white farmhouse with an uneven porch, its railing missing spindles and paint fading to gray in the heat. The yard, rimmed by wild thistle, held rows of drooping tomatoes and beans that struggled for water, while a single swing creaked lazily from the one shade tree left in the yard. In every corner, the scars of hard years showed: warped window frames, the too quiet chicken coop, the faded marks of once hopeful flower beds. Evenings came long and slow, the fields humming with insects, and crows gathered on wires to watch the day's struggles settle into silence. Rose was the kind of girl who could vanish into a thicket of wild mint or lose an entire afternoon studying the shapes of clouds drifting across the pale sky. At 9, her hair was always coming loose, her knees always smudged, and her pockets forever filled with marbles, washers, or bits of twine she thought might come in handy. She couldn't pass a pile of rusted nails without imagining what they might become. Her late grandfather had called her his little mechanic, telling stories of the contraptions he'd rigged from spare plow parts, homemade windmills, a rainwater barrel made from oil drums, a scarecrow with tin can arms. Sometimes Rose would slip into the old shed, cradle his battered toolbox, and feel close to him just by sorting through jars of mismatched bolts. At home, things were stretched thin. Her mother juggled chores and a part-time job at the diner, quick to share a tired smile, but even quicker to deflect praise for simply carrying on. Rose's little brother, Sammy, trailed her every step, clutching a stick or helping fetch bolts for whatever experiment she had dreamed up. Their father was gone most weeks, mending fences or hauling hay for distant farms when he did come home. His hugs were rough, but his words gentle, always asking Rose what she'd built this time. The weight of the family's worry pressed on her, small but insistent. Rose listened to late-night whispers about bills and land sales, and though she felt small, she clung fiercely to the hope that if she could just fix something big enough, maybe the grown-ups would believe the farm could be saved. Every day, the rows grew shorter and drier, yellow leaves curling at the edges where there should have been deep green. The wind no longer carried the sweet tang of earth, but smelled instead of baked dust and brittle stalks. Rose's mother and father spoke in hushed but urgent tones on the porch, voices low after supper, their words traveling like worries through the thin farmhouse walls. Bills piled up on the counter beside a jar of loose change that never seemed heavy enough, and the repairs needed for the rusted old irrigation pump had been put off too many times to count. Neighbors and even relatives dropped by less often now, uncomfortable with the sour edge to every conversation. When they did come, their words dripped sympathy, but their eyes betrayed a polite hopelessness, already grieving the farm's end. Rose overheard talk about putting the land up for sale, a notion her heart pushed angrily away. All the while, the laughter that followed her scavenging runs grew sharper. A few kids imitated her, dragging sticks and old pipes and calling it inventing. The sting of being dismissed only hardened her resolve. If no one else would believe in the land, Rose would prove its worth with her own 2 hands and every scrap she could find. Rose's backyard soon looked like the workshop of a wild inventor. Using broken pipes, she cobbled together crooked wooden frames, hoping to funnel water from the chicken coop roof into thirsty garden beds. She wedged worn pipes into puddles, patched them with tape and bits of cloth, coaxing Sammy to help hold them in place while she hurried to pour bucket after bucket of precious well water through the system. More often than not, water burst through the cracks, spilling into the weeds or pooling uselessly far from where it was needed. Still, she dragged her wagon into town each week, searching for cast-offs to haul home, undaunted by smirks or whispers from the store porch. "There she goes again, hunting for rainbows in the junk pile." A neighbor laughed, and Rose's face burned, but she pressed on. At home, her mother tried to soften the blow as gently as she could, checking on the latest tangle of pipes. She would kneel by Rose's creations, run a comforting hand through her hair, and whisper, "It's okay to rest, honey. Not everything can be mended." But Rose couldn't yet let go. Even Sammy, eager to help, sometimes lost patience, storming off when a promising leak suddenly turned into a mud pit. Her lowest point came after a Saturday experiment. She thought she'd finally designed a way to drain washed-out rows, but a slip of her makeshift pipe joints let an entire barrel spill out, flooding a new row of beans and drowning their last hopeful sprouts. That night, Rose sat behind the barn, shoes soaked and hands stained with failure, listening to neighbors joke that she'd wasted another summer on fool's errands. She wondered, staring at the ruined crop, if maybe everyone was right that sometimes no amount of effort could change a stubborn field or the fate of a small farm kid with big dreams. Late one afternoon, as thunder rumbled along the horizon, a summer shower beat a wild rhythm on the tin barn roof. Rose sat sulking on the porch step, when suddenly she noticed the water gushing off the back eaves rushing directly into the flooded chicken run, turning dirt to soupy mud. An idea struck. What if she could send that water somewhere useful? She ran to gather her bent, battered pipes and, heart racing, jammed them together, guiding the runoff on a hasty, crooked path to the far edge of the garden where the soil cracked hardest. Sammy handed her a board to prop up the highest joint, water splashing her arms as she worked by fading light. By morning, the damage in the chicken run was gone, but a different miracle waited. The tomato stalks at the garden's dry edge nearest where Rose's pipes emptied stood taller, leaves fresh and green for the first time in weeks. Her mother, blinking in disbelief, touched the soil and called for Rose, laughter and hope finally mixing in her voice. Neighbors peered over the fence, quiet for once. Rose grinned, the ache in her chest lifting. At last, her strange collection of parts had become something real, and for the first time she believed maybe she saw what no one else could. The morning after her rainwater experiment, Mr. Adler, her next-door neighbor, whose own hands still bore the stains of a lifetime growing tomatoes, walked over to the fence. He had always been a watcher, more curious than mocking, and now he nodded towards the pipes winding through Rose's garden. "Ever see a siphon work, Rosie?" he asked with a half-smile. Intrigued, she offered him a cup of weak coffee and listened as he explained how even broken pipes could move water with gravity, as long as you knew where to start and where to lead it. That afternoon, they set to work. Mr. Adler, Rose, and even Sammy collected buckets and markers, mapping paths across the rows and digging shallow trenches where needed. Over and over, Mr. Adler demonstrated a tilt here, a narrow opening there, a rag plugged into a leaky side. Each time it rained or when Rose and Sammy hauled water from the well, she learned to patch holes with baling twine or to wedge stones under joints to steady the flow. Over the next 2 weeks, the maze of pipes grew, winding through the beans and tomatoes, making their way to the dry, far edge of the fields. With every storm, less water pooled uselessly at the barn and more soaked into the parched corners of the earth. It became a new kind of summer game, Toby bragging to neighbors that his big sister could make rain go sideways, Rose's mother learning to fix a joint, even her father, home for a rare weekend, kneeling beside her to help pound in another support stake. The changes came slowly and then all at once. Flowers bloomed where the earth was once only dust, zinnias and sunflowers shooting skyward, their faces bright with hope. Rows of lettuce and carrots thickened, green and eager, and the beans climbed in tight, twisting vines. The pride in Rose's mother's face outshone any words, her laughter frequent, her eyes wet as she weighed the harvest. At the feed store, Sammy told anyone who'd listen about Rose's pipe puzzle. Neighbors paused at the fences, slack-jawed, no longer laughing but craning for a closer look. The farm was alive again, not perfect, but in every patch of green, there was proof that with patience, grit, and a knack for seeing use in the discarded, even a girl's wild ideas could summon a new kind of summer miracle. As autumn rolled in and the fields turned gold, word of Rose's pipe farm spread beyond the lane. When the annual harvest picnic arrived, families filtered toward her house, arms full of pies and corn pudding, but also curiosity. They wandered through the garden, following the snaking trail of patched pipes and careful channels, shaking their heads in admiration. Farmers who'd once laughed now crouched beside Rose, asking questions, marveling at how she turned runoff and junk into the lushest plot in the county. A few quietly offered old hoses and spools of wire from their own barns, small gifts for a new kind of friendship. Even the feed store critics showed up, wives and grandchildren in tow. One by one, they tipped their hats and introduced the next generation to the girl who taught water to mind. Rose, beaming but shy, explained her maze, tracing lines in the dirt with a stick as the grown-ups nodded along, amazed at the transformation. For the first time, she felt fully seen, not because of any single invention, but because people recognized the hope and stubborn optimism she'd poured into every patch. Beneath the midday sun, laughter replaced old gossip, and in every handshake or small act of praise was the truth. The world's greatest changes often begin with a single brave mind willing to see what others miss and a spirit that refuses to give up on broken things. Have you ever turned something broken into something beautiful, or watched someone surprise the world with an unexpected victory? Share your stories or family inventions in the comments below. We read every one, and your wisdom can inspire others too. Let us know where you're watching from and how you've seen hope take root, even when everyone else doubted. If Rose's journey moved you, subscribe for more true rural stories of resilience, creativity, and the quiet heroes in every community. Remember, every town needs a rose, and sometimes all a rose needs is a chance to bloom.